The first time I saw Shatili, I could hardly believe my eyes. I had been in a bus for half a day on these bumpy dirt roads through the mountains, and then suddenly it's just there before you, like before you even realize what you're seeing. So the morning starts in Tbilisi, which is a city of over 1 million people, and by late afternoon, you come around this corner and you go over a little hill, and then there before you is what looks like an ancient fortress city of stone, like something out of a fantasy novel. So what is Shatili? Is it a fortress? Is it a city? Is it just a group of towers? So the most descriptive term is that it is a fortified village complex deep in some of the most mountainous parts of the Caucasus, and it is actually right over that hump that separates the North and South Caucasus. So Georgia is almost entirely in what is considered the South Caucasus, but Upper Khevsureti is right over that hump and several kilometers into what is considered the North Caucasus. So the village complex is made up of residential and defensive stone towers, and at each floor you'll see embrasures had been built in the walls for guns during the original construction. These are the smaller holes that you see. There's even an old collapsed tunnel that runs from the middle of the complex down to the river that residents could use to move in and out of the complex without being seen. Now, originally, each family had their own tower that they lived in, and their animals would come in at night on the lowest floor. Now nobody really lives in the towers anymore, and there are modern houses that have been built near the complex, but some of the towers have been converted into guest houses. Today the towers belong to the descendants of the families who originally lived in them. Now, even though most of them do not live in the area anymore, no one would ever question their descendants' rights to their ancestors' tower, but they could also never sell their tower to an outsider or anything like that. Unfortunately, some of the towers are in very poor condition and sometimes collapse. On one of our visits there in 2017, right after a heavy rainfall, one of the towers had just collapsed the day before, and one of the local residents was telling us how it happened.
ეს არის სალოცავია. დღეობაში ხარშება ლუდი ათენგენობა. წვიმები და ისინი რო იყო, ტოვა დადიოდა რა იქ წყალი ზევიდან და თან ისეც გამრუდებული იყო კედელი და თოთაგაროს დაინგრეოდა. ჯვარისტერია ყველას ან დღეობაში არ დაინგრა ეს თორე ჩაიყოლებდა ყველას აი. თითქმის აი 60 ის არის ამ ხალხის. გადარჩინე რა. გადავრჩით უბრალოდ. არის რამდენიმე კოშკია. შეიძლება დაინგრეს. და წყალი რო დადის ეს არის თიხით აშენებული. ცემენტი და ის არა აქვს. იმას ჩამორეცხავს და ეს ქვები კიდე ერთმანეთს ზიავეს და ინგრევა. სალამ შური. Ничего. აი. იდა დანგრეული არის აგე იქით. ნაშენები რა. და ყველა გადმოხრილი არის აი. ყველა საშიშელი ამ ადგილზე რაც ნაპირი კოშკი არის. ბანები აღარ უარგა, ბანებიც გაფუჭებულია და კაი ნაშენებია, ზოგი კოშკია კაი ნაშენები, ზოგი იმდენად ცუდა ნაშენები და ხელშეწყობა უნდა რა, გადაფარება უნდა რაღაცა, წყალი არ დადიოდეს რა. ეს ერთი არის აქ რომელიც დაბლა რო არ გაის. ჩანგრევაზია ისაც. ხო, საცხოვრები. აი იქ იყო საიდუმლო გასასვლელი იმ ტრისთვის რო ტერო შემოსულიყო აქედან გახვიდოდი და დაბლა გასდიოდი. ოღონ დაბლა ჩატიდო. აქედან იყო ჩასასვლელი რო მიწა ქვეშ იყო გასაძრომი და ჩადიოდი დაბლა. წყალთან უკვე. საიდუმლო გასასვლელი.
So I'm going to give you some historical context, I'm going to tell you how to get there, I'm going to give you some practical information, and I will also be geotagging the places I'm talking about and putting that information in the description along with some other essential info. So why does Shatili exist as it does where it is? Why is there this fortified town at the very top of Georgia in some of the most mountainous terrain in the Caucasus? Well, first, Shatili is located in the Arkhun Canyon, which runs from Chechnya into Georgia. And at Shatili, the canyon opens up and there's a confluence of mountain rivers. So it really is an ideal place to live and build a stronghold, with also having some surrounding land for livelihood activities. But more importantly, the Arkhun Canyon is one of the main passageways through this mountain region into the lowlands of Georgia, so it is critical defensively. So it's not so surprising that the Khevsurs in Georgian culture more widely are traditionally hailed as the protectors of the north, and they have acted many times as basically the first line of defense from invasions coming from the north. Now, if you read up on Khevsureti in English, you'll also hear a lot of comparisons with medieval European crusader motifs. Now, the visual similarities are striking, but also fairly superficial. So when you visit, I think it's more meaningful to think in terms of these warring Highlander tribes in the 17th and 18th centuries, and connected to that also the Russian-Caucasian War. And it is also worth your time to read up on the tapestry of ethnic groups that makes this one of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse regions in the entire world. And I'll put some links to good resources in the description. Now, one of the most comprehensive and technical descriptions of Shatili comes to us from Sergei Makalatia. Now, if we can have a brief reading rainbow moment here, this is my copy of his book about Khevsureti. Now, Sergei Makalatia was a Georgian Soviet ethnographer from the 1930s, and he covered many of the Kartvelian Highlander peoples in his books. And when he visited Shatili, he recorded that nobody living there knew how old the towers were. But based on the embrasures for guns built into the walls of the towers, he concluded that the towers had not been built before the 17th century. Now, in Shatili, people's last name is Chincharauli. Chincharauli comes from the Georgian word Chinchara, which means stinging nettle, and of which there is plenty in Khevsureti. In the Soviet Union, Shatili also became a very popular setting for Soviet cinema. Several Georgian directors shot some of their most famous films here, some really excellent films, which were then seen all over the Soviet Union.
Datvisjvari Magari Khevsureti. Gharibni magram aragata havisupal amaqi Khevsureti.
I think it's also worth mentioning one of those tragic ironies of history of this area here. Ever since Alexander Pushkin, writings and films of the area have greatly romanticized the people and cultures that their powerful states behind them were at the same time in the process of subjugating and dismantling. Now, if you read up on Shatili, you'll also hear that Shatili is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, while it deserves to be on this list and it is in need of much attention and protection, Shatili is only on UNESCO's tentative list of potential sites, and this designation, in fact, means very little officially and confers no actual protection. So when you visit, be careful for your own safety and respectful of the towers, as currently there are no management plans or safety fences or anything like that. Now, the most famous battle at Shatili is known for the death of Akhferdil Muhammad, or Akhferdi Muhammad as he is known in Georgian. Now, this guy was the right-hand man of Imam Shamil, the famous Dagestani resistance fighter who for decades united the North Caucasus in a holy war against the Russian Imperial Army in the 1800s, completely frustrating them. Now, while Shamil was fighting against the Russians and most of the people of the North Caucasus supported him, the Khevsurs refused to cooperate with him or even let his men pass through the Arkhun Canyon. So, fed up, he finally sent his right-hand man, Akhverdil, with a small army to basically bulldoze his way into the lowlands of Georgia, but they never made it past Shatili, and Akhverdil was killed. So then the Tsar's viceroy to the Caucasus, the famous Mikhail Vorontsov, then gave Shatili an inscription on stone recognizing their victory, this great accomplishment. And this stone is still kept in Shatili, or so I'm told. I've never actually seen this inscription because every time I've been there, the person with the key to the tower where it is kept has never been around. Now, when Shamil was finally captured in 1859, he was then taken to St. Petersburg as a prisoner, only to discover that he had meanwhile become this world-famous, greatly romanticized hero. He was met with crowds everywhere he went. Everyone wanted to visit him, invite him to prestigious social events. He was installed at a nice estate near Moscow, and later when he began to have health problems, he was even given a mansion to live in Kiev. He's an absolutely fascinating individual, which I don't have time to go into more here, but I'll recommend a few good resources in the description. Now, I suggest spending at least one night in Shatili if you can. There are lots of great guest houses, and I really like how it is the local people who have been benefiting from the tourist industry here, and they also really like visitors, and the new livelihood opportunities that tourism offers has enabled many people there to reconnect to their families' homes. Now, to get there from Tbilisi, it's about a 4.5-hour drive on a bumpy dirt road. Don't believe Google Maps when it says it's only 3.5 hours. And really, you want to give yourself plenty of time to go slow and make many stops. One of my favorite stops is Datvisjvari Pass, which will be the highest point on your drive. This is the pass that separates Upper and Lower Khevsureti, and is also the pass that is absolutely inaccessible for much of the year. Now, you can also make it to Shatili by marshutka. The marshutkas that go from Tbilisi to Shatili leave from Didube metro station. The metro in Tbilisi works very well, and it's extremely cheap. You can walk into any metro, buy a metro card for a few lari, which is about $1, and then ride anywhere on the system for 50 tetri, which is about 20 cents. Then a marshutka ride to Shatili from Didube metro is about $10. And to rent a taxi to drive you one way would be about $80. To stay in Shatili for the night is about $15. Now, the frequency of the marshutkas and the prices can also change by season and with year, so I'll try to update the description of this video with the most recent information a couple times a year. I like to stay in the guest houses across the river from the towers because there's a great view of the towers and they make good food there. But there are lots of other guest houses, and you can find them on Airbnb, Booking.com. You can just Google or Facebook message them. Now, while you were there, if you have time, be sure to go farther into Upper Khevsureti, see the Anatori Crypts, and the other fortified villages like Mutso and Ardoti. And if I have a chance, I'll make some videos about them as well. So if you have questions or thoughts, please put them in the comments. And if you like the video and want to encourage us to make more, that's very easy. Just like and subscribe. Okay, thank you. Have fun.